workforce and competing. You can steal people's information and their vital statistics and give it to harmful or deleterious third persons in the gang-stalking mechanism to slow or hinder their progress through American society. And you can alter the trajectory of someone's life through biorhythm hacking and other such thuggery, which will result in a person's day-to-day life and their day-to-day situation becoming increasingly more unstable due to the mobs of strangers that are constantly being signaled to their exact location for no reason other than to cause a disruption. It also can utilize something called intentional disease spreading, or as I like to call it, biohazard warfare, germ warfare, and biological terrorism, in which these federal liaisons send hordes of sick thugs and thugettes to a targeted person's exact location with the intention of getting them sick somehow with a combination of proximity and various bodily functions being unleashed around that person, including heavy breathing around that person, coughing, sneezing, and other bodily functions that could contaminate that person's air with airborne bacteria. These things all combined create a domestic terrorism element to gang stalking. And it is domestic terrorism because it's happening in the homeland. That makes it domestic, and it causes harm, injury, and or death to the targets. That makes it terrorism. And because of the probable exponentially high number of targeted persons and their significant others who have been harmed and or worse because of this synchronization is higher than that of the number of people deceased in 9/11, that makes it terrorists and terrorism definitely against the American populace. And because this program was passed clandestinely through national security packages over the past 22 years, those who are directly involved in the signaling and disruption mechanism may or may not be a part of various Department of, we'll call them federal law enforcement agencies and or the United States Department of Defense. This gives them a sort of feeling of being above the fray and being sort of above the law with respect to the kinds of disasters that they can cause in the lives of United States citizens using their various disruption tactics. Ultimately, the United States federal government, its establishment, is going to have to look at this program critically, fess up to it, own up to it, let the American people know what it is, how it works, why it works, and how much it costs, so that the no taxation without representation clause in the United States Constitution will not be breached by the federal establishment of this country and its national security apparatus. I would like to reiterate, ladies and gentlemen, I am not, when I use the word federal establishment or Congress, I am not referring to any congressperson in particular, because I don't believe that it was any congressperson in particular that is responsible for the implementation of this maddening mechanism. My thinking is that Congress, in an attempt to remedy the chaos that 9/11 caused and the subsequent war in Iraq, implemented a number of a number of national security mechanisms without fully understanding what it was they were signing. The drafters of these bills were probably in a panic-stricken state, particularly with the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, who I know has a hand in these operations, with respect to how they implement certain surveillance protocols and disruption protocols. I think the Department of Homeland Security has done a good job with its work with ICE in deterring illegal border crossings into this country, And I believe in the 2003 to 2010 time frame, the Department of Homeland Security did a good job in identifying possible terrorist threats to this country. Furthermore, it's done well in handling, in assisting federal, state, and local law enforcers with manhunts against people who have committed heinous crimes throughout the country and are on the run. However, given these successes, I think the Department of Homeland Security has overstepped its boundary as a federal authority for good, law and order, and criminal justice by facilitating work in this program, which has many names, including covert war. And I have in many respects equated gang stalking to an open-air war between the United States federal establishment, its national security apparatus, and me, your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, a sovereign U.S. citizen who has no terrorist ties and no criminal record. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the social engineering protocol that gang stalking has disguised itself as has utterly failed, and it's failed because it's causing harm to people who would not be harmed otherwise. It's causing disasters to people who would not otherwise be disaster prone, and it's causing catastrophes against U.S. citizens who otherwise would not experience such a catastrophe, all due to its presence and implementation, which is wildly thuggish, hostile, violent, silly, disruptive, and buffoonish. Ladies and gentlemen, the internet is your friend. You can discover anything that human beings have devised through the internet. Okay? From 10,000 years ago to the present day and even into the future, ladies and gentlemen, if you harness the power of the internet and use it as an investigative resource, you can find out various pieces of knowledge that will enhance your perception of the world around you and make you less easy to be trifled with, even if it is a federal auxiliary like the United States federal government, ladies and gentlemen. And as I said in my discourse a few days ago, about a week ago now, entitled The First Amendment, the First Amendment is here to enhance and protect your sovereignty as a United States citizen. By being able to speak out not only against your fellow citizens, but against companies and governments in instances of wrongdoing, you are protecting yourself. You are informing the general public, and you are helping society progress satisfactorily when you use your freedom of speech rights, which are guaranteed in the First Amendment along with the freedom of the press. These rights were specifically included in the United States Constitution by the framers of the Constitution, many of whom are referred to as the founding fathers of this country, to protect you and me as sovereign United States citizens from government tyranny, which is exactly what we're experiencing right now. Furthermore, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution was implemented by the framers of the Constitution for similar reasons, so that you could defend yourself in case of government tyranny. Now, this social engineering mechanism called gang stalking has the capacity to become something much worse. Eventually, this thing could grow into a depopulation protocol in which certain members of the American public are targeted for elimination. For this reason or that, they don't particularly have the spine to put it out there. Why are some people targeted and some aren't? The process is extrajudicial, behind the scenes, and out of sight. All we know is that one day you wake up and boom, you're in a synchronization campaign. That is not meant to be your friend. That I can promise you. It is your enemy, and it is your personal disruptor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a shame that even in a public facility or facilities, you can experience gang stalking. You can experience synchronization in courthouses. You can experience it in any federal building, any state building, or any local building. So, what is social engineering? It is the process of using power that you wield to implement social change, particularly in a way that bypasses the will of the United States sovereign citizen. Ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, you can't bypass the will of the citizens. It is the citizens who vote. It is the citizens who pays taxes. It is the citizen who rely on constitutional freedoms to get by day to day and have a successful trajectory through their mortal or natural lives. If you are bypassing the will of the people, particularly in times where you are trying to implement social change, particularly through a national security apparatus, what you are doing is you are ignoring the sovereignty of the United States citizens. You are ignoring constitutional precepts. You are ignoring the Bill of Rights, and you are ignoring inalienable rights, which are rights that a person has regardless of the country they were born into, simply as a human being born into this world. You trample my inalienable rights. You call me an enemy of the state. You wage a private war on me. You tell me that I have no rights, and you demonstrate that I have no rights using a group of disruption experts who have the full backing of the United States national security apparatus. You trample my inalienable rights. You're dealing with me as a man. Now let me give you some insight on how I deal with these types of problems as a man, because you're obviously not dealing with me as a citizen, because you've ignored me as a citizen, and you've ignored my citizen rights. Okay, I'm talking to you liaisons, I'm talking to you stalkers. Okay, you've ignored my rights as a citizen, so now you're just dealing with me as a man. Fine. You still got beat. You still got exposed. And eventually you're going to retreat. And I did it administratively. I didn't have to do what so many other disenfranchised U.S. citizens have done over the years. I didn't have to create a militia. I didn't have to create a underground group. I didn't have to join any such group. I simply gathered my data, observed my surroundings, put it into context, fastened a truthful narrative to it, and put it on the internet for the whole world to see. We are seeing, ladies and gentlemen, firsthand why the free and open web is important. We're seeing why social media is important. Clearing my throat, ladies and gentlemen. You see why websites are important. You see why the free flow of informational data is important. It's important because if you apply these freedoms with a sense of diligence and justice, you can protect yourself a lot better than you would if we didn't have the free and open web. I've been able to research gang stalking and programs like gang stalking that have gone back 60 years because of the free and open web. I've been able to communicate my instances of gang stalking from the free and open web. I am able to communicate with federal, state, and local governmental auxiliaries about gang stalking I've experienced at public facilities using the free and open web. I've had the opportunity to research historical and political matters much more easily, and much more thoroughly, and much more diligently as well, because of the free and open web. The free and open web is a friend to humanity. It is a way to research your surroundings and research your governments so that it will be more difficult for them to rob you of your sovereignty. In my opinion, the free and open web go hand in hand with the First and Second Amendment rights of the Constitution of the United States offers. It allows you a way to defend yourself against your fellow man. It allows you the opportunity to effectively defend yourself against government tyranny. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. As always, it was nice to have you listening to my program. This lecture has been called Social Engineering by me, your host, and have a wonderful day. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to add a quick extra component to my previous lecture, Social Engineering, because I want you all to know how these thuggish, monkey-like, piece of shit Miami-Dade County undercover operatives conduct themselves. I've said in previous dialogues that they conduct themselves like zoo animals. I consider them lower than dogs, and they are essentially violent, nutcase, homicidal, maniac, dumb, aloof, foolish, criminally negligent, hateful, and ultimately useless pieces of camel excrement. Okay, now having said that, I'm going to wrap this up quickly because it's going on to my previous discourse. As soon as I finished my social engineering discourse, I got on the bus, and one of these pieces of dog excrement sat in front of me, obviously off of a signal, on the bus, even though there were about 25 other seats he could have sat down in. I didn't want to sit near the piece of garbage, so I stood up, and when I stood up and I grabbed the handrail in front of me, he intentionally moved his arm so that his arm would make contact with my hand as I grabbed the arm rail. I moved to the seat furthest away from that piece of monkey excrement that I possibly could, and he got off a few stops later, no doubt, to tell another piece of monkey monkey excrement that happens to do undercover work in Miami-Dade County, not so much as to keep the county livable or civil, but rather to go about pestering people in a monkey-like manner without recourse, that I attacked him or that I intentionally made physical contact with him. So that created a need for retaliation. Just about a few minutes ago, as I was getting off the metro rail, another piece of monkey excrement Miami-Dade undercover jumped over in front of me as he got on the metro rail and intentionally waved his genitals in my general vicinity, creating a smell that would resemble ape excrement. So I figure, if you act like a monkey, if you're a monkey in your soul, if you go into undercover work so you can act like a monkey without recourse, continue conducting yourself like an ape. Do what you have to do, and I'm going to continue exposing your ape-like, monkey-like, and baboon-like behavior online for the entire world to see, so you can continue making yourselves, your families, and your countries look like garbage. Thank you for tuning in.